Welcome to Greek for a Week. I'm glad that you are looking at this week's video. And this week we are looking through two verses, verses 14 and 15 of chapter 3 in the book of 1 Peter. Continuing also with our paragraph, A Suffering Unjustly, chapter 3, 13 through 17. So we'll begin to translate. Then I want to look at a few things grammar and syntax related. He begins, Peter does, by saying, but, which is in strong contrast to verse 13, but even if you should suffer for righteousness, you are a blessed one. And do not fear their intimidation, neither be troubled, but sanctify the Lord Christ in your hearts, always ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account concerning the hope that is in you. So again, the Allah at the beginning of verse 14 is a conjunction here that is contrasting the previous verse where he says, who is it that will harm you? Then he begins this verse, but it's potentially, and that's why I say it's potentially because of the optative verb here, pas koite. Christians will not generally suffer, but there could be an exception, which is what he is introducing here with this clause that begins with the Allah. And the reason that you potentially would suffer is because of righteousness. In the concluding predicate adjective here, blessed one, he's saying here that will characterize you through the suffering because you are suffering for what is right, which is the dia dikaya sunain, because of righteousness. Then you have here the rest of the verse really cites Isaiah chapter 8 verse 12, and then the next verse, verse 15, cites a portion of verse 13. So that begins here. That is our use of the Old Testament. Then he has here two second person plural aorist middle subjunctives. That is here when he says do not fear, and then also do not be troubled. If they are taken as passives, which the BDAG, which is a Greek English lexicon, the BDAG states, do not let yourselves be intimidated or be troubled. So your passive ending is the thete here on both of these verbs. But there are also those who, again, take them as middle, probably emphasizing the subject to not fear and to not be troubled. Then, of course, you have a de here, which just continues the argument from verse 14. And he says here, sanctify. So here is my imperative. That is a aorist active imperative of hagiazo, second person plural. So the contrast is to basically not, there is a negation up here, not to fear, not to be troubled, but contrast here, sanctify the Lord Christ in your hearts. Of course, the entes cardies, there is your, you could say your locative, where do I sanctify the Lord? That is in my heart. And then he says the pros apalagian here, which would be purpose. The purpose for being ready is to give an answer. And then last point I want to make here is your toe. Your toe, I tunti. Okay, this is your substantival participle that also serves as a dative of reference. Present active participle, masculine dative singular of aiteo. So he's saying here, anyone who asks you. So with, you could say even with reference. So be ready to give an answer always with reference to those who ask you. And then of course this peri here, one final preposition, again likely refers to reference. Be ready to always give an answer. And then he says concerning or with reference to, again, your hope. So there's verses 14 and 15 of chapter 3, 1 Peter. Have a great week.